What do you mean? What do you mean? What do you mean? What do you mean? What do you mean?
That's the name of the chat.
Okay, first of all, I want to say that I hope Anna and Cenk and all their loved ones are safe. I don't know how far or close they are to the fires happening in California right now, but all disagreements aside, no matter what I have to say about people, their safety and well-being is the most important thing, and so I really hope that they're all okay. And now with that said, in my previous video about them, I said I would be curious to see if they report about certain things, and so I thought I'd make a follow-up. And as a reminder and for some context, I'm going to play some bits of my previous video, but if it's already fresh in your memory, feel free to skip to the time on the screen right now, and let's get started.
Some video footage that shows armed men confronting a driver in the parking lot of the apartment complex. Let's put that up. So if you look closely at the kind of upper right-hand side, you see a car parked and you see individuals approaching that vehicle armed with guns. Luckily, in this case, the footage doesn't show anyone getting hurt or getting shot. But apparently, this particular apartment complex, according to some of the residents and former residents, has been riddled with all sorts of gang violence over the last year. But this incident has sparked a big debate and I believe some gaslighting about whether or not there is a problem with Venezuelan migrant gangs basically taking over apartment buildings or causing violent crimes at these apartment buildings. And the local government can't seem to keep its facts straight or its story straight. After that, it appeared that the state and local leaders kind of went into panic mode because they started to claim that there's no problem at all. What do you mean? This is a figment of your imagination. In fact, the governor, Jared Polis, claims that the allegations are a figment of your imagination. And Aurora's interim police chief said that the gangs had not taken over one of the complexes. Now, depending on what you're hearing different things. And whether or not this is a widespread problem in Aurora, Colorado remains to be seen. Let's be clear about that. But the issue of this Venezuelan gang carrying out violent acts and crimes in the area, there seems to be a lot of evidence of that, while the Democratic lawmakers and leaders in the state and local level want to pretend like it's not happening.
What you choose to cover and how you choose to cover it, that does matter, right? We're trying to push back on right-wing narratives while TYT is leaning into them and making all of our jobs harder. YouTuber Jose put out a really thoughtful response to TYT's coverage of the bullshit Venezuelan gang story, which I would highly encourage you to watch, because it demonstrates how TYT played into a bogus right-wing narrative in a way that validated the right's narrative about crime and immigration. Narratives matter. Take a look at this YouGov graphic from 2022. So Americans overestimate the size of minority groups, which means that fear-mongering about these groups are going to be more salient if they're told that they're a threat, since they're perceived as being larger than they are. I mean, they think that trans people make up 21% of the country, but it's 1% in actuality. They think Muslims make up 27% of the country. It is 1% again in actuality. They think that gay people make up 30% of the population. It's just 3%. Now, when you look at this poll from Ipsos, as you can see, people with misinformed views were more likely to vote for Republicans. So if they thought that violent crime rates were at all-time highs or that border crossings weren't at the lowest level in years, then they voted Republican. This is why the issues that we choose to focus on are so important. And it's why we're critical of TYT, because they're focusing on issues that benefit the right, not the left.
And I have a news clip to show you with an update on the situation with these apartments from the 18th of December 2024.
19 people have now been detained in the hours since police began investigating an attack on tenants at a troubled apartment complex in Aurora. Aurora police say more than a dozen people kidnapped a man and woman last night at the edge of Lowry Apartments. That's on Dallas Street near Colfax. According to police, the group took the couple from one unit to another at the complex, tied them up and assaulted them. Police Chief Todd Chamberlain believes the attack was gang-related. He stopped short of saying that it was tied to the Venezuelan gang Tren de Aragua. The chief did say that he believes that most of the people involved, victims and attackers, are Venezuelan migrants.
And the reason they do that is because they are easy victims. Because they know, because of their status, they will not come forward to the police. They know that they can mistreat them. They know that they can do things to them that they couldn't do to anybody else in the community, based upon their fear of what the ramifications would be if law enforcement gets involved in that.
Police say the couple convinced the group to let them go by promising not to call police. He drove to a friend's place and got help. They were both taken to the hospital and are expected to recover.
Alright everyone, fair's fair. If you go to the description box below, you'll find a link to the template to an apology card for, oh wait, what's that? There's more of this news clip to go? Well, we should probably hear them out.
So Aurora is taking the property owners of that complex, the managers, and the investors to court.
The city says if an agreement is reached at a hearing next month, tenants would have 30 days to leave the apartment. 9 News reporter Janelle Finch joins us now with where those people might go. Janelle.
The city of Aurora says there hasn't been a finalized resolution between the city and property owners on what's next for the Edge at Lowry. But housing advocates are already saying the city needs to prepare for fallout if tenants are forced to leave. The Edge at Lowry Apartments is out of chances for redemption, says Aurora City leaders.
Well, we have filed for the criminal nuisance, so that is the route that we are going.
The city says a home invasion where a man and woman were hospitalized with serious injuries strengthens their case to get the apartment shut down. The decision would impact more than just the bad actors.
We're going to see mass exit to a state of houselessness with families with young children if the city doesn't intervene.
V. Reeves is an organizer with House Keys Action Network Denver. They say tenants could face a similar fate to those previously living at an apartment operated by the same company.
We've already seen what happened with Nome Street.
The city closed the apartments on Nome Street in August. More than 300 families were forced out and given just 6 days to find a new home. Reeves says the city needs to prepare resources to help relocate.
We need city support in order for this to be successful. We still know people on the streets.
The city of Aurora says it'll put legal responsibility on the property owners to pay for costs to close the apartment and assistance provided to tenants. Aurora says tenants here would have 30 days to leave if the apartment closes.
These people have rights as much as anybody else, and we need to defend them very strongly and very vocally right now.
The city says the property owners are required to file a formal answer to the criminal nuisance complaint by December 30th. Court proceedings are scheduled to continue in January. Janelle Finch, 9 News.
Alright, so we'll hold out on filling out the apology cards to Anna. We'll wait and see if or how she covers this story. Because, you know, she was covering what's happening in these apartments. She could very well fill in everyone with the update. She might spin it as a I told you so moment. But I really would want to hear her commentary on the legal fight behind it and all the people that will end up on the streets because of it. And so keep an eye out for any coverage of this update to this story. But Anna was complaining that the city wasn't doing anything about it. Well, now it seems like the city's going to close down a second block of apartments. So that's why I'll be really interested to see if Anna covers this update and if she goes into how so many people are going to lose their homes and be given 30 days to find somewhere else. Be very interested to see if Anna addresses that. So you can see why I was quite interested to see how Anna would report about the update on the situation. So I thought, considering that was from the 18th of December 2024, I'll go to their channel to at least then have a look what they've uploaded, and it does not appear that they have covered this. However, this video, which is in a way relevant, got reactions from other channels I'm subscribed to. They made very good points that I'd like to share with you now.
I was, perusing TYT, checking out their numbers, see how far their decline has gone. And they had a video called U.S. Homelessness Rate Just Had a Serious Spike. And I thought, you know what? I'm going to give them the benefit of the doubt. I'm going to watch this and maybe they'll be like, you know what? This is a huge rent cost problem. This is the billionaires. Maybe I'll get to hear some legacy TYT. Maybe I'll get to hear them make the case against the billionaire class like they used to so well. Gavin, did you get a chance to take a look at this, or are you going in cold?
I have not yet had a chance to watch this, so I'm excited to hear what you're talking about.
Absolutely. Let's watch, and then I'm excited to get your reaction.
Federal government reports that there has been a double-digit jump in American homelessness compared to last year, and an even bigger jump among families.
According to the government's latest data, more than 770,000 people were unhoused in a single night in 2024, up 18% from the year before and the highest number ever recorded.
And those shocking numbers were released by the Department of Housing and Urban Development. They looked at the number of homeless people between January of 2023 and January of 2024 and noticed that pretty steep spike in the number of people living on the streets in the United States. Now, what is behind this massive increase in homelessness? Well, if you read most news reports, they just simply say housing prices are too high, which is true. But what's driving the increase in housing prices? Why is housing so unaffordable? Well, we're about to break that down for you piece by piece. But before we do, there's something that you should keep in mind. So again, this data was collected by taking a snapshot of one night in January of 2023 and then comparing it to one night in January of 2024. So the numbers are about a year old. And putting that aside, let's dive into what the findings were. So the report on homelessness was again put together by the US Department of Housing and Urban Development, and the numbers are very bleak. So nearly every category of unhoused people grew, with a rise especially steep among children, 33%, and people in families, 39%. The number of people in shelters rose by about a quarter, while unsheltered homeless rose 7%. The rise in homelessness among older adults continued as well, with a 6% growth in those 65 or older. Now, much of the report actually focuses on one of the main factors behind this.
You guys are not going to fucking believe what she goes with on this. It's absolutely crazy.
So they talk about how the influx of asylum seekers immigrating to the country has exacerbated the housing crisis because we already had a housing crisis spurred by the shortage of housing units available. And so here's what they found. Migration had a particularly notable impact on family homelessness, which rose 39% from 2023 to 2024. In the 13 communities that reported being affected by migration, family homelessness more than doubled. Whereas in the remaining 373 communities, the rise in families experiencing homelessness was less than 8%. So I mean, this is, in my opinion, just simple numbers, logic, supply and demand. There was already high demand for limited housing units, and then you introduce an additional population into the country when you haven't really increased the housing inventory, and it's going to again exacerbate the problem.
That's like saying there's an issue with people not having enough to eat because there's not enough food. You know what I'm saying? Like, you know how you see those photos of dumpsters behind a Walmart after the store closes and it's just fucking full of perfectly good, fresh food that anyone could eat. Imagine saying, oh yeah, sorry, there wasn't enough food for everyone. There's just not enough. There's not enough. There's a shortage of food. In the same way that saying that about housing, oh, there's a shortage of housing, it's a supply and demand issue. That's just not the case. There's like 1 million buildings all across this country that are completely empty.
Yeah, like here's a empty building which has 98 units in it. This is the apartment complex that's on Nome Street, and it was closed down in August of 2024 and was operated by the same company that runs the apartments that Anna was talking about. Now you see, this building was closed down because it was deemed unsafe and unfit for people to live in. It had code violations going back 2 years, and the owners and CBZ management claimed that they were unable to do maintenance and repairs on the buildings because it was overrun by migrant gangs. Pattern emerging there. And now I'm going to go out on a limb here. What if we do the maintenance and the repairs on the buildings that are necessary so they don't become unfit for people to live in? Whoa! Crazy thought. Crazy thought.
Owns that asset and wants to profit off of it. If he can, if not, it'll just lay dormant, yada, yada, yada. You know what I'm saying, though?
Oh, 100%. You're spot on. And the crazy thing is that this is the home of progressives. So instead of coming in and talking about what a tragedy it is that we allow people to use homes as assets instead of prioritizing roofs over people's heads for one of the first times in human history, and that's why homelessness is skyrocketing, right? They don't talk about how they supported a billionaire real estate developer for mayor of Los Angeles named Rick Caruso. Okay, they don't talk about how Jeffrey Katzenberg, a guy that gave them $20 million, has a pet issue called I Hate Homeless People in Los Angeles. Okay, oh, I happen to be the founder of DreamWorks, and I hate looking at the poors in my once gorgeous city of rich and tan. You know, it's crazy. That's exactly what happened. Go ahead and Google all of this. There's receipts for everything.
I did exactly that. I googled it, and the boys are absolutely correct. But here at What Do You Mean, we like to be fair and balanced. So I'd like to point out that if they're getting shat on for backing the guy that they did, they probably would have been shat on for backing the other candidate, Karen Bass or whatever, because they might have been accused of being paid to have that opinion. That's the problem with taking money. People don't know your motivations anymore. But, you know, being fair and balanced, thought I'd point out that they probably would have gotten backlash no matter who they picked as a candidate for the mayoral race in LA.
But I will give Cenk the benefit of the doubt. He's taking in his new role well. Anna says some evil Witch of the West shit, and he comes in with a mildly less insane take from the Witch of the West.
So during the Biden administration, before he did his executive order for the southern border, he had paroled 1.4 million asylum seekers into the country. Obviously, that's going to have an impact on homelessness when we don't have enough housing to withstand the increase in population. Cenk.
Yeah, so there's a number of factors that leads to homelessness and the rise in homelessness. So when you look at the different factors, you have to try to separate them out to the best of your ability. So we had a lot of these factors earlier, but when the migrant wave came, the numbers went up. And so you see that how it adds to the numbers, right? And you go, okay, that's the difference. And that's why that doesn't mean the migrant crisis is the only thing causing it. It's just saying that it's causing some significant percentage of the increase.
See, because at least Cenk is saying migrants. He's calling them migrants. Anna is blaming it on asylum seekers. What? Now, not every asylum seeker ends up becoming a refugee, but every refugee started off as an asylum seeker. And so here's something from the United Nations Refugee Agency. The tendency to conflate refugees and migrants, or refer to refugees as a subcategory of migrants, can have serious consequences for the lives and safety of people fleeing persecution or conflict. And if your job is talking in front of a camera, you should probably be a little more deliberate with your words, and unless that's truly what you believe and who you blame, then, you know, carry on, Anna. And now over to Brittany Page, who does a fantastic job, and the links to the videos I used will be in the description box below. Please go subscribe to these other channels. Thanks.
But we have more disinformation here, and it's a problem because not only are we fighting a well-funded right-wing media machine that misinforms the public about the causes and solutions of poverty, we have media figures who say that they're on the left, contributing to the spread of misinformation as well. So I'm going to break down a few moments in this new segment that Cenk and Anna did on homelessness. But first, to give you some context, in this segment, they are discussing the new report from the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development, the 2024 Annual Homelessness Assessment Report to Congress. This report dominated headlines because, well, it's devastating. The key findings show us that the number of people experiencing homelessness on a single night in 2024 was the highest ever recorded. Reading from the report, a total of 771,480 people, or about 23 of every 10,000 people in the United States, experienced homelessness in an emergency shelter, safe haven, transitional housing program, or in unsheltered locations across the country. People and families with children had the largest single-year increase in homelessness between 2023 and 2024. 39% more people and families with children experienced homelessness. Overall, the numbers of people experiencing homelessness increased by 18%. That 18% increase is on top of the 12% increase we saw in January 2023. You may have heard of the point-in-time count. That's how we get these numbers. On a single night in January, there's an effort across the nation to count the number of people who are homeless. And as we can see, we have the highest number ever recorded. And I'm not going to get into this aspect of it, but many people were not actually counted.
I will take a moment to go into it because other than places in Oregon not doing a complete count, so that would mean the number is possibly higher, but what would definitely make the number higher is the fact that people that are homeless but staying with a friend or a family member, they're not counted. So the number would be considerably higher because there would be a fair amount of people in that situation, I would imagine.
So you know that this does not include everyone who is homeless. The number is likely higher. But what does this report say about the reasons for this increase? Well, the report cites several factors, with the main factor, of course, being the housing affordability crisis, rising inflation, stagnating wages, and the, quote, persisting effects of systemic racism. They also cite natural disasters and the rising number of people immigrating to the United States, as well as the expiration of essential support programs put into place during the pandemic. Many people have led with the migrant crisis as the main factor here, and I would treat any person who does that with skepticism. While immigration certainly factors into increases in places like New York City, Chicago, Denver, there are several states that saw record levels of homelessness that were not impacted by an influx of migrants. States like Idaho or Kansas, for example. So Cenk and Anna begin their segment talking about this report and focusing really on the immigration aspect. And then they pivot to a discussion on other factors that contribute to homelessness. And they hone in on what they believe are the missteps in attempts to address the homelessness crisis, specifically a reliance on the housing first model. And let's just start there. We'll be addressing both Anna and Cenk today, but we will start with Anna. Watch this.
I think the failure of the housing first policy is that it pursues a one size fits all approach to this issue. And this isn't a simple issue. This is actually a much more complex issue. We do need to build more housing. There's no question about that. But there are people who are struggling on the streets with severe addiction or severe mental health issues. So if you are someone who has a severe mental health condition, right? Let's say paranoid schizophrenia or something like that, you haven't been getting the medical care you need. Just taking you and putting you in a apartment unit is not going to solve the problem.
Anna, truly, how are you still saying this? Taking someone who is ill and putting them in an apartment, and that's it, that is not housing first. Listen to the phrase that you are using. Housing first. It is not housing only. This is so irresponsible of you, and you've had so much time to learn about the model that you continue to denigrate, and yet here you are, still misrepresenting it in the most ignorant and cringeworthy fashion. How are people supposed to demonstrate medication or treatment compliance or adherence to sobriety conditions while still enduring the instability of not having a stable and safe place to live, wondering where they will get their next meal? Wouldn't it make more sense to first ensure that the basic need of shelter is met, while at the same time providing wraparound services to assist with mental health conditions or addiction issues? Mental health conditions and addiction issues are not ignored in a housing first model. In fact, housing first exists to make it easier to address those very issues. It's just that you don't have to go through this phase of proving your worthiness for housing to get it. You exist, so you are worthy of housing. That's housing first. But that doesn't stop Cenk from joining in to say, no, actually, housing first is totally useless.
On housing first, that's a third problem. Because a lot of folks have tried housing first and they go, don't ask if they've got mental health issues or addiction issues, and let's just put them into houses first. But it doesn't address the underlying problem. And almost no one has addressed the mental health crisis.
Yeah.
And so there's a lot of talk from our side, the left, about, oh, we've got to address that. But no one ever actually does, right? They do the housing first, but they never follow up with the mental health funds. So then,
yeah,
that creates a problem where people don't even stay in the houses.
They don't ask if they have mental health or addiction issues. Could it be any more obvious that Cenk has never worked with this population? The problem here is that Cenk and Anna take selective examples of fraud or misallocations of funds for homelessness services, and then they generalize that as a widespread problem. They take selective examples of programs not operating as they should and say, look, this is evidence that housing first does not work.
We're not done yet, because you'd think that they would go into detail and discuss the affordability factor about this all at some point, somewhere. So we had a little look through their channel, and the closest we get to talking about the affordability of homes is, believe it or not, this video here. House prices are plummeting in these states.
Housing prices seem to be falling in certain parts of the country despite the sharp rise in housing unaffordability in America overall. Now, Fast Company notes that in some parts of the country, home prices have experienced either a plateau or an outright decline. And so where are we talking about and why is this happening? So in their piece, Lance Lambert writes that in October, US home builders reported having 113,000 unsold new homes. While this is still below the 2007 peak of 117,000, it's above the pre-pandemic October 2019 level of 77,000 and marks the highest level since 2009. That's actually shocking. Now, look, this is complicated because obviously people want to live where the jobs are. And so it might not be helpful for you to find out that housing prices have started to decline in these parts of the country. But it is interesting to see that when you build more supply, prices start to come down, right? So it's kind of a case study here. Now, Florida was a hot market during the coronavirus pandemic, but the market has cooled since then. However, because there was a lot of demand in Florida, developers started building. And then when, people moving to Florida slowed down, all of a sudden developers are like, oh, we've got like this inventory of houses, and now they're like desperate to sell them. And so here's what they found. This is according to Nick Gurley, who is a housing analyst. He told Fast Company, Florida is getting hit by three main headwinds entering 2025. A slowdown in inbound migration, excess supply hitting the market from home builders, and an affordability crisis for existing homeowners related to HOA and insurance costs. The combination of these factors is pushing more inventory onto the market. So more people are actually selling in Florida as well because the insurance costs have become so high. So there is more inventory that's making the prices come down. He says, I wouldn't be surprised if home values in certain markets in Florida drop by as much as 10% next year. Cities such as Tampa, St. Petersburg, Sarasota, Punta Gorda, and Naples are most in the crosshairs of this slowdown.
I just wanted you to get a feel for the things that she did decide to quote and the parts of articles she did decide to share in this segment about housing prices plummeting when everyone else is talking about how everything's not affordable. But this is from an article that Anna must have also used. From the very start, she didn't bother to include this very interesting information. National home prices are up 2.3% year over year between November 2023 and November 2024, according to the Zillow Home Value Index. While that marks a deceleration back in March of 2024, that year over year national home price growth rate was 4.6%. It also marks the 13th straight calendar year that national home prices are up. 13 straight years of increases. However, not every housing market saw a rise in home prices in 2024. Among the 250 largest metro area housing markets, 250 out of the largest 250, 28 markets are seeing falling home prices on a year-over-year basis into 2025. So they're focusing on this 28 out of 250 that they even mentioned in this article at the very start. What's even the point? Oh, and I have to mention how they keep trying to bring it back to it being a supply and demand issue. If you build more houses, the problem will go away. But also briefly mention how Florida has people having to leave because they can't afford the insurance or they simply can't get covered. Their house is uninsured or they cannot afford the insurance, and when that causes people to have to leave and sell their houses, probably fairly cheap, you got these clowns going, oh look, there's cheap houses over here. See, look, there's more supply. Prices go down. Or maybe it's also the insurance affordability being a problem and climate change making it harder to live in certain places. But you know. All right, we'll just play a little bit more of that clip just so I can make my final point.
This is obvious. Supply and demand are not negotiable. It's just a fact of life. And so when you have more supply, the prices come down. That's just easy to understand. And that's definitely what's happening here. I'm going to do a little needless haha. So all the folks who are like, everybody's moving to Florida, California sucks.
Don't be salty because
Okay, no, it's not you.
Be salty because I thought about it.
No. You didn't go. Okay.
Look, I'm going to be upfront and I'm going to say that I think Anna will be happier in Florida. She doesn't seem very happy where she is. And now, just to bring this back around to the fire situation and the homeless situation, I have to share a tweet with you from Anna from January the 9th, 2025. And she writes, California, especially LA, is controlled by Democrats. They are responsible, no more passing the buck. Our mayor, who was in Ghana as fires exploded in our city. Alright, interesting point. But as an Australian, relatable, our Prime Minister pissed off to Hawaii when our whole country was on fire, so I feel your anger. Then she says, cut the fire budget by 17 million. Also a relatable thing to be angry about. But here's where it gets weird. Endless amounts of money funneled to bullshit, scammer, homeless non-profits. What has that got to do with anything? She then goes on to say, we're the highest tax, yet we have encampments and squalor everywhere. Even worse, we don't have enough firefighters to respond to the absolute disaster we're experiencing right now. Rather than conserve the record rain we got last year, we just drained it into the ocean. We are a failing city run by a sick excuse for a local government. You want to radicalize people against the modern Democratic Party? Send them to LA. Bizarre tweet, I must say. Especially considering she's written this while reposting a video that explains how one billionaire couple owns most of California's water, and she goes on about homeless people. Like, what? What is going on? How do you go from this one billionaire couple yanked all your fucking water to fuck these homeless people? What the fuck is happening? Okay, final thing to wrap it all up completely, to answer a question I had from my original point about the apartments in Colorado. I was curious if she knew about that update, because if she knows about it and doesn't report about it, I will judge that differently than if she just didn't know about it altogether. But according to this, she is aware of it. I don't know if she's aware of the whole story with how many people end up homeless. So my question's not fully answered. Thanks for watching. Relevant links will be in the description box below. Please like and subscribe, and I will see you next time.
What do you mean with an exclamation point?